So the Indiana Fever are in a little bit of like a really weird predicament right now. Like they're not quite good enough to win a championship, but like there's no one piece that'll make them win a championship. But there are a couple of players that could be really, really freaking good for the Indiana Fever. And we have got to just look at what Lin Dunn has, well, done. What she's done since taking over the Indiana Fever in 2021 or 2022. She has made some of the most crazy, like, non-basketball moves I have ever seen. I've never seen some of these things. Like, yes, she looked into back-to-back number ones and took the obvious first choice both years. Like, no one was taking anyone other than Aaliyah Boston number one, and no one was taking anyone other than Caitlin Clark number one. Like, it was the tankathon of all tankathons. No one will ever be that bad. But if you want to look at this Fever roster, so you want to know where their problems are. I think they have a little bit of a lack of size. So when they do play against the big centers, Aaliyah Boston can tend to struggle. But we've seen Dantas playing the four, and she's not as mobile as Aaliyah Boston. So we could definitely see a situation where they probably could have a bigger center off the bench, which could help. Obviously, the power forward position is a huge issue. That is a huge issue right there. And as well as that, they don't have that like wing player that can score a couple of points. So overall, the team is just constructed quite poorly, and they're screwed with contracts. Because whatever about giving Erica Wheeler contracts over this year, Katie Lou's on a near max contract next season. Dantas, to be fair, not a crazy amount they're paying Dantas. But the Katie Lou contract, it's awful. Like, it's an absolutely awful contract. And looking at it, you're looking at some players that would fit them. A stretch four who plays defense is what they need. As well as a player that can maybe come in at that three position and give you something on the defense and the offensive end. Someone that can be like a stretch four, but can also play the three on the wing, is like versatile. And yeah, so perfect players would be maybe, like, this isn't the craziest one, maybe like a Tiara McCowan off the bench, like, could absolutely just be a dominant force off the bench. And if you wanted to run, like, without the spacing, maybe you could play Aaliyah Boston, Tiara McCann together. Like, that hasn't seemed to affect Caitlin Clark too much playing with double bigs. So maybe that combo, they'd be a bit slower, but you just got to have wings that are super fast with Kelsey Mitchell. And then obviously another perfect player would be like, whether they be a starter, the fifth starter for Hull, or a bench player, Emily Angsler would be perfect. And then obviously the perfect Nalissa Smith replacement is Alana Smith. Like, replace Smith for Smith, but go for the Australian Smith, who's the better player. What if I told you the Dallas or the Indiana Fever had Tiara McCowan? And in fairness, I will say that they don't have Lexi Hull or another person without making this trade. So this isn't the worst thing in the world. But what if I told you in Lin Dunn's first offseason, do you want to know what she did? She traded away as much as she could to get a third of the first round picks. She had a third of the first round picks in this draft and ended up coming out with Queen Egbo, Lexi Hull, Emily Angsler, and Nalissa Smith. And you might be saying, oh, that's not a bad haul. It's not a bad haul. It is when the first thing you do is, sorry, that's put in the video, is cut Emily Angsler. You cut Emily Angsler. She didn't even make it a season. Emily Angsler, yes, I get it. She hasn't, like, her stats don't jump out. But, like, she's 6'1". She's played as a small ball 5 at times this season. She had, 17 against them? She is such a good... Since the Olympic break, she has become one of the best, like, bench-type players. I can see here 19, 12, 10. She is what everyone thought Katie Lou was going to be. A relatively big, tough defender who can play 2 through 5. Honestly, she played the small ball 5 times to the Mystics. Who will attack rebounds, be physical, be aggressive. Emily Angsler is, like, a perfect player. She's a perfect player for the Fever. And they freaking had her. They had her. They literally went through this draft and took Nalissa Smith over Shakira Austin, who is way better than Alyssa Smith. Way, way better than Alyssa Smith. Took Emily Ensler just to cut her. Lexi Hull, fair enough. In fairness, like, no, they didn't play Lexi Hull last year. Like, as much as it's like, oh, they shouldn't have cut, like, they took Lexi Hull, it's a good pick. Man, they literally didn't play her. They did not play Lexi Hull through the first half of the season. Lexi Hull was getting DNPs and Christy Wallace was starting. She was starting. And also, everyone thought this was like a too high a pick for Lexi Hull. They take Queen Egbo, who got cut straight away. I'm trying to... This wasn't the greatest draft in the world. Like, obviously, Naz Hillman wouldn't be a bad player to have. Nelson Adoda would be a great player to have. Like, if they had Nelson Adoda with that second round pick, like, if they had taken Nelson Adoda instead of Queen Egbo, that would have been huge. And there are a few players, like, you're never going to just guess that, like, Sika Kone and Jade Melbourne were going to be, like, as good as they are. Like, you're not just going to make those guesses. So I don't really hate those picks, but, like, how... No. Imagine if in a hypothetical situation, even if they do make the McCown trade, and they come out of this draft with Shakira Austin, they keep Emily Ensler, they keep Lexi Hull, and then they take Nelson Adoda with the 10th pick. It would have been crazy. But also, they traded everything to get a third of the second round pick, and you end up with the worst starting power forward in the league, and Lexi Hull, who you were giving bench splinters to until a few weeks ago. But also, this. The best stretch for in the WNBA was waived by the Indiana Fever. And by the way, she immediately the next season went as starter for the Chicago Sky, who were pretty good. The 2023 Sky were a pretty good team because they had they had Courtney Williams, they had Kat Copper, they had Marina Mabry, they had Alana Smith, and was Elizabeth Williams there at that stage? I think Elizabeth Williams might have been there. But like they are, yeah, Elizabeth Williams there. That was a seriously good team with Alana Smith starting immediately afterwards. And now Alana Smith is one of the best players for the Minnesota Lynx. She's genuinely one of the best players. She made the All Olympics first team. She's only 28 years old. So it's not like she's old. In the WNBA, she's still got her 6 or 7 years. Imagine a hypothetical situation where the Indiana Fever's roster looks like this. They go in with, and whatever, even if you're just saying taking the obvious picks, I'm not even going to say like a hypothetical drafting above, like Alyssa Smith was obviously going to. Let's just say you've got Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull / Emily Ensler, Alana Smith, Aaliyah Boston, with a bench of Lexi Hull / Emily Ensler, Tammy Fagbenle, Nalissa Smith. You don't give Dantas the contract, and you give $100K to somebody else. And Erica Wheeler's not a terrible bench player. And if you had a coach that would play Grace Berger, like that team is going to compete for a championship. This team is not. That team is. Anyway, I just realized my camera froze, so I'm going to pull that up there. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.